Hi, I'm Priscilla with the Environmental Center. We are here at Smith Rock in honor of Native American Heritage Month, and we've invited our Indigenous neighbors to come and speak and share in storytelling.
I'm from Bend, but my tribe is Citizen Potawatomi Nation, which is in Oklahoma. So yeah, we're out here. It's November. It's really nice today, but usually at this time of year, as we get closer to winter and the spirits fall asleep, this is the time that we start doing our storytelling. Usually there's snow on the ground, but we're still going to count it as winter. So yeah, that's why we're here.
Winter time is when the spirits in the Northwest wake up. And that's when we have our medicine ceremonies because of that. Summertime, if we tell them in the summer, spring, or fall, those spirits get angry and it'll thunder and lightning, it'll snow, and those are things we take into consideration, because if it snows and gets too cold or floods, then we can't gather our roots, or our berries don't mature because they get frozen. And so we were told not to do that in summertime, when our harvest time for our traditional foods. Our people would be moving home now in November from gathering camas or huckleberries up in the mountains, be moving back to the lowlands. So that's why we had to obey those, like you heard me in Paiute language, we call it Nihani. We have to follow those laws of the world, of nature. I look at it, and in the Warm Spring language they call that tah. I always think that our truths are embedded in our legends, and that's why we try to keep them alive. The Warm Springs people have a legend of Mount Adams and Mount Hood fighting over Mount St. Helens for her affection, and the Coyotes separated the fighting factions by creating the Columbia River to keep them apart. And then in the war, when they decided to call their families to come to support them in the battle, all of Mount Adams people from the north start coming down the trail to join, to fight. And then all of Mount Hood's people came up from down south to help. And so in that fight, to cut a long story short, there was a obstruction in the Columbia River, which is now known as the Bridge of the Gods. When they shot arrows, flaming arrows, and things at one another in the sky and burned up the land, it started to destroy. And a lot of, they said the mountains on our reservation used to be a big mountain like Mount Hood, and it got its top blown off to what it is today. Newberry Crater also got destroyed in the battle. And so on that side, there are other features up in north in Washington that were destroyed, and their tops were knocked off during the war. Part of the traveling faction that was going up was Green Ridge and Lava Butte. Not Lava Butte, Black Butte. Black Butte was the lady. They call her Umtanut. She was a new bride. And her husband, Chinut, is Green Ridge, the new husband. And on the way up, that was probably the start of women always grumbling around about everything, because on their travels, she was mad because she had to pack everything in her basket. And her husband just had his guns or he said, well, not that time, had bow and arrow and his spear, and he wasn't helping her, so she was complaining. They'd have to stop, and he'd complain, and she'd complain. He laid down to wait for her, then she squatted down. She was grumbling, and he was grumbling, and Coyote was going, heard them. He said, this has got to stop. Now, all you mountains, all you people that's going to the war are going to be changed to mountains. So he stopped them in their tracks. So Black Butte is still peeing. The Metolius River just bubbles out of the ground. No spring, no convergence of a bunch of little creeks. It just bubbles out of the ground. It's never stopped. And Green Ridge is still laying there, yet waiting for her to finish. Our old people have said all around Black Butte is our roots and our berries that we use for food, because when she was turned to Black Butte, all those things fell onto the land and made all of our foods there. And all the hunting stuff, the bighorn sheep that used to be there, mule deer, elk, mountain goats, whatever, they're all on Green Ridge to this day.
A long time ago, Mamogosnan, who is the creator, flooded the earth. And so all of the animals and people were just swimming around. And so here's my picture. So they were swimming around, and a couple weeks went by and they were tired of swimming. They wanted to find some land, and they wanted to get out of the water. So Wiske, which is man, everyone say Wiske. Wiske. Wiske, which is man, said, okay, we need to go find some water, or find some land, and I think there might be land under this water. So someone needs to go down and find it. The first one to volunteer was Shishibe, which is duck. Everyone say Shishibe. Shishibe. So the duck went down, he said, I'm gonna go look down there and see if I can find it. So he dove down in the water, and a few minutes went by, didn't come back up, and then another few minutes went by, and he eventually popped back up gasping, and he said, I couldn't do it, I'm sorry. And so he got on the log. Everyone was floating around on logs, by the way. And so he got on the log, and the next one to come volunteer was the loon. And so the loon dove down, a few minutes went by, nothing happened. A few more minutes went by, still nothing. A few more minutes, and the loon finally reemerges, and he's gasping for breath, and he said, I saw it, I saw the land, but I ran out of air, I couldn't go. And so he gave up, and so then they're all trying to figure out what they're gonna do next. And then this little furry guy, Zheshko, everyone say Zheshko, the muskrat, the cousin of the beaver, said, well, I'm gonna try. And everyone's like, I don't know, I don't think you can do it. Like, we already had these guys try it and they couldn't really do it. He's like, well, I'm just gonna give it a go and see what happens. And so he dives down, and a few minutes go by, a few more minutes go by, a few more minutes go by, and they start to see some air bubbles coming to the surface. And then the Zheshko slowly floats up, and he's dead. And they pull him onto this log, but in his little hand, he's holding a piece of dirt. He's holding the piece of land. And so everyone is super touched by this, especially the Mashike. Everyone say Mashike. Mashike. That's the turtle. And so the turtle is really touched by this. And so to honor the Zheshko, he says, you can put that land on my back, and this is what we're going to create Earth on. And so he puts, I think I have another picture. Oh, here's my little Zheshko diving down. So they put the land on the Mishike's back, Mishike, and it grows and grows and grows until it becomes the earth that we are on today, on Turtle Island.
My job today is to just talk about a real internal growth event that I had in a place called Mill Creek. My job 35 years ago was to walk creeks to look for the reds that the spring Chinook salmon leave. You know what a red is, that's a nest. The female salmon clears out an area. It's got to be just right. You know how them women are. And it's got to be just right with the water flowing just right and the gravel a certain depth and all that. And so I came upon this red after, it's about a 4.5 mile walk. I was 2 miles down the way, and I took a break right at this one beautiful red. It was just classical. And there was 3 dead salmon, I thought at the time, downstream from there. And then when I stood up after my break, put my pack on, one of the fish woke up and came up between me and the red. And then I noticed that the two, they call them bucks. The men are called, the boys are called bucks, and the female's a hen. And so I sat back down. Okay, yes, ma'am. Yeah. And so she flopped over and floated downstream. And well, that's it. And then I just sat there again, wondering what's going on here. And then when I got up again, she came back to and protected her future, her nest, her gift. And then she flopped over for the very last time. I waited for her to come up again. She didn't. And I broke into tears. This creature, that creature, listen, when they're born, they're just little bitty guys like that. They go through hell to get down to a bigger stream, and then a bigger stream, 2 dams, those fish, 2 dams, go out to the mouth of the Columbia, and they switch gears there into from fresh water to salt water. Amazing in itself. And then they go take a right for 1,000 miles up to Alaska in that area, through all kinds of chemicals, through all kinds of people trying to catch them, critters trying to eat them, and they grow, and they get big. Then they get the urge to come home. They turn around and another 1,000 miles back down to the mouth of the Columbia. Come on in there. Again, switch gears back to fresh water. Amazing. Again, I'm really impressed by now. I'm thinking about it. And found her way back home, the natal waters, to then have the next generation. Wow. I live by that strength today. It was just me, the creek, and those 3 what we call gifts from the Creator. So that was nothing to do with anything I read, nothing to do with anything I was told. That was a message just for me from the Creator.
So my Indian name is Wawink Talikatsa. My father is Ishtamalut from the Snake River, Palouse, and my mother is Tumsi Akin from the Wasco, Dog River, Wasco. And my English name is Jolene. And what we wanted to do today was try to get you a little bit involved in, in the story, in the area. So one of the things that I started about, I think about 12, 15 years ago was I wanted to see if our people could still do tribal dialogue. which is very different than what we do every day, the monologue. So we had a group for 2 years and had a group of mostly tribal people come together and just see if we could do dialogue like we used to when we had our big encampments and, you know, things like that, a way of communication. So, and these people that came, most of them are tribal leaders and elders and people like that. And it's getting at conversation in a much deeper level than you do in the everyday monologue, when it's you and one person sharing your ideas, your opinions, you know, your point of view, centering yourself. So what we try to do in our group is to decenter the self. And so, yeah, that's what we wanted to try with you all, a little dialogue maybe. And so the way we want to start is the first step in decentering yourself is knowing who's in your community. And so you're not just looking at just yourself, like who else is here and what is their role, their responsibility in this community. So then you start to look at, you know, who's here. I'd like to have you also share a story about who you are, like your deepest level of, you know, who you are, your commitment, and a story about what gave you that passion for life, for that area, why you care about something so much. It usually comes from somewhere. So to have you all think about that, that's kind of in our kind of more indigenous worldview, we share at that level all the time, but when I work with people that don't have that worldview, a lot of times it's, you know, they don't have that same level. So I like to have people really start thinking about, you know, what that is. You want to really listen for the role that you have and kind of the gifts that you have to offer to that community, and know when you listen for when it's time for you to step forward. And that listening is based on that conversation in the community, not your ego and like, oh, I got a great idea and I want to tell you what it is. What we learned in our group was that when that happened, you could just hear it. It's like a big clang, you know, like, oh, you know, that wasn't it. Whatever your roles are in the community, if you feel like there's a responsibility, you know, for you, then to contribute something, you know, feel free to, you know, to do that.